Welcome to the IVM Podcast Network.
Hey, episode number 11 of Shunya One. I think if you say that in binary, it's another number though. But I'm happy to be here. My voice is back.
Yes, it is. We can hear it.
Even though we did a weirdly meta episode on episode 10, I think episode 11 should be a whole bunch of fun. And I'm happy to have here my good friend and longtime entrepreneur himself, Kris Nair, with me.
Hey, man.
What's up, Kris? How you doing?
Good, man. You?
Same shit, different days.
SSDD, yes.
Like
Same
you
shit,
said.
different days.
Like you said. Great. Great. I think that's a common theme we're going to stick with.
All of us say that all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's a theme for all us old-time entrepreneur folks who've seen the world a little bit.
Scars.
And have scars and have hopefully a bunch of stuff to talk about. So, Kris, I know you for a while now. You're also someone who's done a bunch of stuff in the past. Some of it has worked, some of it hasn't, and now you're also getting into a new chapter of seeing things from the other side of the table on the investing side. So we're hopefully going to talk about a bunch of all of this today.
Yeah, sounds good.
And for everyone listening in, this is our show, so let's get it on the road. So, Amit, how have you been? What's happening?
I've been good. No news as such, man. I've been good. Missed last week with you, sick.
I know.
But
so it's been a torrential rain.
It's been crazy, man.
Crazy rains this whole week and the past week. So I think I just sort of succumbed to that. But I'm happy to take a small break and be back here. And like I said, I have my hot coffee today. I'm still not doing the Diet Coke from your stash.
That's all right. Next time.
Yeah. So we were talking earlier about how we all sort of have backgrounds where we've done a bunch of stuff as entrepreneurs which haven't been your typical startup stories,
right.
Especially the ones that get, written about on first page of pink papers and other things and on startup blogs and so on. So we've sort of interestingly had backgrounds where we have done a little offbeat kind of stuff, right? Some of it has worked, some of it hasn't.
Right.
And I wanted to ask you, Kris, like amongst all the stuff you've seen and you've done, why do some things just get the kind of glitz and glamour and appeal that the rest of the world sees them as the next
You mean
big
from
thing?
like a fundraising perperspective, right? Not as opposed to like the business fundamentals perspective.
Not just that. I mean, fundraising, obviously, popularity. Obviously, popularity attracts the right talent. Talent helps growth. So it's all sort of connected, right?
Okay, fair enough.
Like
I think what's not the reason primarily is like the charisma, as the venture investors say, the CEO's charisma.
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's partly the reason.
Yeah, but
Joking.
also the kind of topics and the kind of products they've chosen. So what have you seen and in all your years of being an entrepreneur so far, and what have you seen as the main reason to why people choose to not love a lot of the stuff?
I think most of the founders were not really like funded by the major, like an institutional, the venture capitalists is primarily probably a little early or late, and not fitting into the theme where the investors are looking at. Let's say in architecture, when my founders and I we started up, it was 2013, and we were trying to do something in architectural technology. Right, and the application of that was kind of like you can use that particular technology in renovating a space.
Right.
This is definitely not something you hear or read about every day, right?
It's not a sexy business,
but it is kind of core tech. It's primarily like bringing data back to a very cluttered industry like construction, and everybody kind of from outside, everybody loved it, right? But then a lot of investors and their associates and vice president visits your office and take all the notes and everything. Then suddenly an application side of a similar technology gets funded. There was this boom in late 2013 and 2014. Everybody was doing home services where getting 20 million, 30 million, 40 million.
Right.
And most of them.
And how many of them were there, man? I can't even remember.
Yeah, so it was primarily.
Ask Bob.
Yeah, so I mean, with again, like high degree respect to the founders who built it. The interesting question was, one of the investors asked me, and my co-founder said, "Can you give me an example of something like this which worked in the US, so that I can actually like."
That's a popular question.
Yeah,
everyone gets asked.
And if that is the scenario, you imagine like, okay, we are doing simple stuff. Imagine you are a researcher in Indian Institute of Astrophysics, and you're doing something path-breaking, and one of the early-stage investors meeting that particular person and say that he will shoot you, right? Like, because this is original research.
Yeah. But he can always say, "Oh, you want an example? Look at Elon Musk."
Yeah, but then
that's my example.
Honestly, I think the answer to that question in that situation would probably be something along the lines of, we're trying to build an international organization which will sell to the world, rather than saying that we're trying to concept arbitrage, which is what you see in most of the other things. But again, like you're right. It's a tough way. It's tough to answer somebody who asks you that question in that way, right? Because that comes across as like completely arrogant as well.
A little bit. I think a lot of investors, including Indian and Indian Office of International Investors, they would like to kind of find a team who's totally capable of building, finding one spot and growing it the way they want it to, whether it's 6% week on week or 35 or 40 or whatever, and they just want to double down with a little bit of money, right? And if the project works, it works. You can hand over that equity to the next investor and
right.
just move on. End of the day, most of the companies who are doing a little difficult stuff or a little more at this moment in Indian ecosystem, I don't think most of the investors are ready for something like that. Probably like a specialist investment vehicle or a specialist venture capital firm will probably will be the ideal fit for people who are building a little deeper technology stuff, right. Including our industries like manufacturing or the future of factories or
right.
Stuff like that.
And we were saying earlier, right? I think IoT is still one word which sort of has come
right.
into populist investor decks.
IoT is the new solar. IoT is the new food tech.
Yes,
IoT is
so that's that one thing which has sort of cut through into the world of popular.
It can actually regenerate the dead deck, right?
Yeah.
You drop the IoT word, IoT.pdf.
But for everyone else, right? People who are still thinking core manufacturing, like you said, it's a non-starter. It's a non-starter when it comes to these popular VCs and typical institutional investors.
Right. I think popular VCs right now, popular VCs I think are basically tech investors or tech VCs, right? I mean, those are the ones who are looked at as popular. If you're looking to do a manufacturing business which is more tech enabled, then I don't even know if those were actually the right fits for you to kind of go to, because their expertise lies in a different area, I think. Private equity players for manufacturing, I think, would make more sense, right?
But again, they don't come in.
Again,
stage matters.
So
stage matters.
If you're a very early stage founder who's the prototype, you're about a year and a half into this business, and you build a team, and the ideal person you should meet is again like a Series A or a seed investor, right? Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, we have about 120 funds in India, let's say.
Wow, I didn't even know there are that.
Yeah, there are about 35 coming, by the way. If you look at this year.
Oh, really?
I can give you a list.
Hey, can I get that list?
Is there a place you can go and is there an angel list for funds only or something like that?
We are talking unicornable ideas right now. So I think from a manufacturing or a core tech or even IoT, the generic IoT or a consumer related stuff, I think 2017 and 2018-19 is going to be the brilliant year for such industries, because of a lot of funds, whether it's young fund or a Series A funds, who are getting a lot of allocation for investing in such companies, right? So if I just do a math, I think about 2,000 to 3,000 crores will be going in from India specific GPs to core manufacturing.
Why is that, do you think? Why now? Are they finally they've realized, oh shit, home services and food tech has peaked?
No, I think Yeah, partly that. And one way is that most of the core tech startups are cost effective from an equity point of view right at this moment, because nobody is investing and they really need money. The ideal way they used to get money was from this Government of India research, whether it's IITs or IICs or wherever. And then these guys do a prototype with one of the major firms or bid for projects and do a little bit of integration and consulting as well, make a little money, reinvest. Now people are starting to understand, okay, these things can actually grow because they already tried to kind of reach that position in the last 4 years of struggle or whatever. Bloom Ventures invested in a bunch of extremely interesting hardware-related companies and
Zenatics and
it's lovely, right? So they are not probably the most profitable companies at this today, but if you kind of zoom down around the 4 years, these guys really gonna kill it. And for a mainstream fund, with the wonderful leadership again, the founders of Bloom is excellent. They can identify and invest in these companies. I think we will see more and more hardware companies coming in.
I think that's a good thing. Right? I mean, what you're saying is that, yes, this is an industry which is finally getting the attention. It was probably neglected and it was probably overlooked. But since few mainstream guys are picking up, there will be more also coming.
It's necessary, right, for the Indian tech ecosystem just generally to have things outside of just the app as a place where people are kind of investing in, right? So it's absolutely necessary that you have a lot of different kinds of companies. So it's great.
And most of the core tech entrepreneurs were a little annoyed because, the food tech guys are getting funded and they're not. But finally, they've been talking to all these corp dev dudes of big firms, that is manufacturing or wherever. And finally, people are understanding, okay, there's player money to be made, and these companies can really grow. The manufacturing firms of probably 80s, 90s, even when our times, everybody was looking at, nobody was putting the startup thing into it, right? Everybody was trying to break even as early as possible, build a team, and slowly sustain and build a serious business. And one day I will become a 500 crore enterprise. Then I will buy my first Audi or whatever you prefer, and you become
and so on. Yes.
Yeah. So then suddenly people discovered,
we can get capital.
No, then suddenly they discovered that, hey, while I'm trying to make my 500 crores slowly and steadily, the guy next door is just doing grocery delivery and he has an Audi already. What?
That too from secondary.
Exactly. What
it's
just happened?
2 years in and he's already 250 crore worth, and the wealth managers are lining up and
I mean, that aside, but I think it was due, right? I think people, I have a feeling, again, from this whatever experience I have running a business which was in core tech, talking to other people in the same industry, whether it's vendors or whether it's consumers, no one really spoke about the value of your company, right? No one talks about, this is also a very typical thing when you have to think of funding. You have to think about what's the valuation and the value of what you're building. Everyone pretty much most people are just doing trading, first of all. Most companies don't even have core value because they're not a manufacturer as such. They're just a layer on top of something else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Then the people who do actually create intellectual property like core IP with some cool science in it and so on, most people don't trust them. Most Indian brands which are homegrown and super very sciencey and have core tech at them, a lot of people don't trust them. So is that still a factor? Unless you're a old dude who's been with a MNC firm and held enough posts, only then you can be a sciencey core tech founder? Or
trust from your customers or trust from investors?
Both, I guess. I mean, again, customer trust you can get by providing good service.
Doing a
selling
good pilot.
Well. Yeah. So you can earn that trust. But as far as investors are concerned, especially if you're early and you have just, let's say, one pilot. How do you earn that trust? I mean, without the pedigree?
I think it's difficult. I think, I mean, the best way, what we are doing right now, from one of the startups we are operating in the core tech space. With whatever little bit of founders capital, what we are trying to do is to get about 6 paying customers in enterprise tech. It is like an enterprise tech company.
Mm-hmm.
And because it takes time to build an enterprise technology company, right? You cannot. So once we have that thing, and the customers are happy and they're using it every day, and we have the data, maybe then we'll go and pitch to
a large venture capitalist. So I think the bar is just higher. I mean, you're saying
correct.
Because these are tough businesses to generally build and operate,
right,
and scale, the bar is higher for an investor to take note.
Yeah, and the motivation, not motivation. I think the whole overall excitement of who will do the diligence, right, from a investor's point of view. The shining example of India's new hardware technology thing is that robotics,
Grey Orange,
yeah. Right. Part of the reason...
Also a Bloom company.
And they're extremely lucky, right? Bloom invested, and the next round, who will invest? Fortunately, the New York-based firm sent a bunch of professors from some of the shining schools and say that, is this all right? Because, right,
Mm-hmm.
And they said, okay, this works. Then they put whatever money they invested in. That kind of built the confidence of the rest of the community.
Yeah.
And the years to come, I'm sure more and more good examples will emerge, and then we will build an ecosystem around
right.
hardware.
So it's still again about trust. It's about the fact that even though India has scientists who are very good and who are and there are entrepreneurs also who have been building companies under the radar which turn out to be great, and they're based on core tech and based on core science. We've just not had the kind of popularity that maybe the same kind of work gets in the US. Simply because we don't have enough people speaking out about it, we don't have enough people to do due diligence and so on. So as this ecosystem builds, and I know another point which we should talk about is within this space there's a whole new avenue of space research and space tech.
Correct.
Which is also up and coming. It falls under just like IoT, it's sort of carving a niche out for itself, and obviously due to whatever ISRO is doing and due to whatever a little bit of private work has happened in the space tech industry, it's sort of getting its day in the sun. So what do you think about that?
In the US, at least, space tech is kind of getting that food tech attention.
Uh-huh.
Right. And India's soft power generally around launch is really high. And India's engineers and scientists working in this space, and with the amount of research laboratories, the amount of labs primarily doing research around it, the quality of institutions who are doing grad research or post-grad research primarily around this space. We have a university dedicated to space research, right? Indian Institute of Space Technology in Trivandrum. And interestingly, because of all these things, and probably because of last 50 years output in this, that much of pure research output is happening now, right? A lot of people working in these institutions, whether it's public or private, thinking about, okay, this is good, but let's start a company and supply it back to my former employer, let's say in that case, whether it's a DRDO or ISRO or Mantrix or whatever. The number of people doing that or following that particular path is actually an interesting number, right? So if I look at the data, I think about there'll be about 300, 400 founders.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Who will be doing interesting stuff around...
just who have realized there's a gap in something and they just go out there and start a company.
Ambitions, the country's ambition in aerospace is kind of really nice. Even though we don't have enough budget and other things, they're really trying to kind of push the limit when it comes to space research and applications. A lot of things, they can't do it themselves.
Right.
So a lot of consultants or the research associates, they joined in a couple of years later. They said, okay, I don't want to pursue academics. A couple of friends got together and figured out a solution, presented to the prof. All well, hey, can we create a solution around it? get a little grant from the government, whether it's $1 crore, $1.5 crore, create a solution back to, sell it back to
the government itself.
The government itself.
Oh, okay.
And that is...
And that's been happening.
That's been happening, right? So the ISRO has been building satellites for everyone, right? Now they're at a position that, okay, now please go ahead and build your own satellites, right? I can help you with the primary mentoring and a little bit of device testing and a bunch of other things. But please do it yourself.
Right.
So recently they gave 4 satellite orders to a company in... again, Bangalore, Chennai, Trivandrum, that belt, saying that, okay, Army or Air Force, one of the forces divisions, they wanted a satellite, a reasonable geostatic one. They said, go give it to these people and they will build it.
Oh, nice.
And we are invested in a company which is making small satellites. And we are good, right? Like, from as a country, we're probably like the first private player to kind of really build a fully... ready to kind of launch kind of solution.
Are the customers government in this case, or is the customer
mix?
It's a mix of this.
So the first example I gave, another private company which is building a larger set of this, I think the forces, the government is the buyer. Our portfolio company, our customers are all private.
Interesting.
No, so that's what he's saying. I think space as a core science or a core tech niche, because the government supported it with orders, with taking even so again, this brings me up to the point of another thing.
I actually wanted to kind of cycle back to one of the things you were talking about earlier, right? I think one of the issues that a lot of companies which are focusing on these B2B segments have is if you are not a well-funded company at that point in time, you can't work with large players.
Correct. Not even just work, but even in this case, when the government is a buyer, right? And again, I know this from experience. Most government contracts or tenders, as they say, have this very limiting condition of like, oh, you must be so many years old, you must be so many years profitable,
right? And
you must have a net profit of so much, like aggressive, like all these things around healthy companies, which typically is not what a startup is.
And like by design, they kind of like do it to get a lot of people out from the tendering process and say that like okay. The founder should look good on a dhoti or something like that. But I think they can add it up.
Even selling to private entities is an issue, right? I mean, like I was just thinking about this from the context of like, so I have a friend who is working on a startup of sorts, and he had a deal more or less set with one of these major Chinese handset makers. Mm-hmm. And they just it went up the ladder. Final approval was left, and it kind of got killed at that point because you guys are not big enough. I don't know if you'll be around in 3 years.
That's always been an issue.
That's a legit reason. Yeah. Let's say, and like you said, all these conditions are usually to cut out the riffraff.
Right.
But at the same time, you're saying like ISRO and a bunch of these other agencies have been giving orders to small startup-y private players who probably don't have these credentials.
Correct.
But that's because there are people in these organizations who have the power and foresight to understand that this is important.
I think the government
working with startups in this space is important.
Right, but I think the government is actually probably a more it's a more successful or more fruitful route for a company of this nature to take to try and sell into government, rather than do into private. Because with government, you can at least, there's an appeals process. You can try, you can get something going. With a private player, it's like once it's no, it's no.
The quality, I mean, the good thing about private players is that, when you show value and you present your facts right, and you have the space pedigree, let's say in launch, they will buy in, right? So because we're still playing around with the cost arbitrage, right? So somewhere, let's say $1 million versus the Boeing solution of, I don't know, 300 million, or 4x the cost manufacturing. And the lower cost of launch, I think about $30,000 per kilogram. It's still cheap.
No, so again, like you said, very specifically in this industry, somehow it has got through. So there are these bunch of founders and companies who have not carved a niche out of themselves, but I would say who have earned the respect and trust of private as well as government players.
I think developed an ecosystem which is conducive
and they're
to
getting
success.
orders, slowly and steadily. So, which is great, but it's not happened in a bunch of other sectors.
In many other sectors.
Right.
The government is still, like, for core tech, let's say, the best and the easiest one to get is still government. Let's say, and then again it comes back to the state's policy for dealing with entrepreneurs. For example, any order under 4 crore rupees, Kerala government prefers first-time entrepreneurs.
Correct. So that's very state-specific.
Yeah, right. And it's a beautiful
that's a great
way to encourage
great
people.
Way to do it.
But not many states are doing it. When it comes to center, they say that, like, a lot of it is PR, right? Like, so say that, we support startups. It's like, cool, here's my idea. Just that, no, you're not really ready. Why don't you sell it to, say, a Wipro, and Wipro then will sell it to us? This happens with a lot of defense players, right? Like, so if you're into anything telecommunication or anything, like, path breaking, unfortunately, the selection process is so long.
Right.
So it's easy to kind of sell it to an Israeli partner, and India will procure it from there.
Wow.
So there's I just forgot, probably I'll give it to you later. This is a Mysore-based night vision company. Mm-hmm. They are about 2 kilometers from the DRDO office. So they had to sell it to Israel. I'll tell you the name, it'll come to me. And India bought it. Right.
Just because DRDO couldn't buy it directly.
Empanelment, man. In government
so
empanelment.
because it's again about patience, right? The best way to kind of, like, make a really, like, impactful company in India is a little bit of patience. And you need to have
a lot of patience, let's say.
And you need to have the resources to kind of, like, keep your nose up.
Exactly. Yeah. You need to be able to sustain yourself no matter what.
Unfortunately, and coming back to the first point, we don't have private investors betting on this, because most of the private investors are kind of used to paper returns happening in 2 years' time rather than, like, happening in about 8 years' time.
Right.
And if you can hold a share for about 8 years, probably, like, it's good. So then you're asking, okay, the entire fund industry to change, right? The entire industry is designed to allocate money for about 4 to 5 years, then make the exits happen.
Right.
And close everything in about...
Find the next guy who can...
Yeah. So,
who's going to multiply my money again.
Yes.
Or destroy it.
Right. Cool, interesting. On that note, I think we can take a quick break and come back and talk some more.
Hi, I'm May, and I'm a huge fan of the indie music scene in our country. A scene that's relatively underground, even though it sometimes speaks its head overground. But there's no shortage of talent, and I get the privilege of interviewing some of the most awesome musicians on my show. I've had the likes of Euphoria, Krish Kale, Hardcore, Randolph Correa. I've had singer-songwriters, folk singers, electronic music producers, playback singers, rappers, fusion artists, instrumentalists, classical musicians, and so on. Whether mainstream or not, these people have chosen to release their original music, and these are the people currently shaping the direction in which our music scene is heading. Join me on my show every Monday and tune in to discover the unique talent coming out of India today. You can catch Made in India on your favorite podcasting app or our very own IVM podcast app.
Cool, so welcome back. And taking off from the conversation we were having about how this is the ecosystem isn't there yet, right? Doing stuff like this is tough. Beyond Space, I think, just to recap, Beyond Space, no one's giving opportunities out to young, new entrepreneurs or new startups in other core tech or core science backgrounds. But what I want to ask, and what I think is relevant, is while most entrepreneurs, like 80% or 90% will still, when they start a company this year, will still be in copy mode, food tech. Let's really hope not food tech anymore.
Solar heating services.
But still, in stuff which has been done abroad and worked abroad and probably will work in India. So if not US, they'll copy a China company.
Cloud kitchens. I'll throw words.
Of course. All of this. Dude, there will be a cloud kitchen unicorn.
There are cloud kitchens and unicorns, man. They're going to happen.
Yeah. Or umbrella. I wouldn't be surprised if China has umbrella sharing.
What was that guy telling us about that Borivali biryani place?
Oh yeah, see,
That's a food tech unicorn. That is a cloud kitchen unicorn. Whatever.
Hidden, slowly growing in your neighborhood, which you just don't know about.
I think Shubham was talking about that, right?
Yeah.
I think it was Shubham who was mentioning that.
No, so obviously someone will, like 80%, like I said, will probably do a copy of a China model I'm sure someone's going to do bike sharing at some point in Bandra only, maybe.
Correct.
Okay. We're all, Chris and I are both Bandra people. There's going to be bike sharing at some point. We just know it. Like, it'll be a hipster startup, but it'll happen. So, what can we say about the fact that there needs to be more people like this doing a little bit more core science and core tech stuff? I mean, even though we're saying the ecosystem isn't there yet, it'll happen, it'll take time, you have to persevere and so on. Why do you think it's necessary more people try? I mean, I know it's necessary more people should try, right? Because India, we are a heavily technical company. Most people who graduate in technical sciences have exposure to decent, I would say science backgrounds if they study.
But then they need to become Java programmers.
Correct. So without going that route, is there any hope? Can we even hope to see more people taking a dive at this?
I think there are enough people in this space doing stuff, whether it's like, pure sciences or application of these things. I'm sure we have enough people focusing on agricultural technology.
Right.
We have enough people focusing and dedicated their life for real food tech. Right?
Like growing food. Better food. Yeah.
And maybe we don't have an ecosystem. Okay, what is an ecosystem? Is an ecosystem is because the Economic Times is writing about it.
Yeah, well, yes, that's
right. Or have easy access to resources, team, capital, customers.
Correct. That is.
And if things go wrong, as a founder in core tech, I can talk to another founder in core tech. Generally chit chat about life and the universe and something.
Right.
So maybe there's everything minus the capital part. Capital is also there, right? But primarily from government institutions, giving a little bit of grants and other things. Yeah. The second is probably the direct customer base. So the only thing missing probably is just the ecosystem. Ecosystem biggest one. It's just basically private investors betting on it.
Right.
If you look at agriculture and technology around agriculture, there are not enough actually. There are about half a dozen funds focusing on that.
Okay.
There's the latest one is Ankur Capital, who has been investing heavily in tech plus agriculture.
Oh, okay.
Brilliant. And there are many, there's Godrej venture capital firm, Omnivore Capital has been really, really investing about quality millions in this space.
So it's happening. It's
happening in certain industries.
You really have to go find it.
It's under the radar. We don't really know about it. We don't hear about it as much.
So they are not really maybe the GPs of those funds are really connecting to the core tech people, right, in those industries.
Or maybe we've not just seen the results of any of them yet. That's why we're saying
possible.
It's still growing and it's still gestating.
Yeah, there is one company who's doing tons of work for Indian Space Research Organization and affiliated organizations in Chennai with about 650 people.
Wow, that's a big company.
That's a huge company. Yeah. And no external funding.
Right, so that's been the typical model for so many Indian firms, right? I mean, people who have been able to make it and sustain are ones who've not needed external funding.
Who generally go to the capital markets first, right? I mean, I would think that's their first step. Personal money from founders or friends and family, build the company
first customer, pilot money.
No, so like I said, if this has to be encouraged more, when I say encouraged, it obviously means to the guy who doesn't have these things.
Right.
People who don't have early access to money, people who are just a young kid who has grown up, done his engineering, seen problems.
That's a problem, no? Why is he doing engineering?
Okay, fine. Maybe he's doing core science. He's doing core science. or physics or chemistry, and he
just stop teaching engineering. We have enough engineering.
That's true. That's true. So we have a guy studying core science. Maybe he lives in a tier 2 or tier 3 city in the country, sees real food tech, agri-tech, whatever tech problems firsthand, understands that this needs to be solved, whether it's in agri, whether it's in water, whether it's in whatever else you want. Understands this needs to be solved, has something in mind, wants to build towards it. But he doesn't have the family and friends resources. He doesn't have maybe even the grant money because he's not gone to the right institutions and so on. So, and unlike his counterparts, the Java programmer friend who is making an app, it's also not easy for him to even distribute or popularize his ideas. So he's not able to get early benchmarking done. He's not able to get...
I mean, raising money is hard just generally, right? I mean,
no, not just raising money. I'm just saying, like, these are also facets of the ecosystem. So more people wanting to hear about new ideas and wanting to discuss and encourage new ideas also promotes more people trying out those ideas.
Of course.
So, and this stands for everything which is a little offbeat, like which is still offbeat. But as far as I know, as far as I understand what is big about India and what is potentially big for the future of India, I think there's a lot of these other stuff or other verticals which really need to be looked at and nurtured. Because let's face it, we're not a urban country yet, right? Primarily, we're still an agricultural society.
I hope.
I mean, it's true. Purely from a landmass perspective.
From a numerical perspective,
nobody
it's
is
true, right?
farming, man.
No, so again, that's a big problem. So, because farming is tough. But it could be easier. Could be made easier with tech. Could be made easier with so many other solutions, which probably is going to come from someone private rather than the government.
Political solutions are also required, which I don't think we should really get into here.
Right. But point being, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff which a core science and a core tech guy can help solve, which are more relevant to our country than bike sharing. So, so how do you get those guys to try those things out more? Like, how do you tell them, hey, listen, probably not going to work, but try it anyway? And that's how startups and ecosystems get built.
Right. And one example of government taking initiative, again, I'm going back to Kerala. If you're an undergrad student or a postgrad student, you got an idea around anything which is interesting, including food tech on the popular way, the government will underwrite the initial 25 to 30 lakh rupees.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it's a loan, but it's okay even if you kind of generally fail.
Right.
And if you take money, then the Industrial Development Board will help you get small contracts from the large government machinery. And Kerala is kind of weird, right? Like, they're trying to put a startup incubator in every taluk, which is kind of stupid, but it's fun as well. And I think last year they gave these small grants, a loan or an entrepreneur loan to, I think, 150 to 200 teams.
That's very impressive. And also, again, that's a state.
That's one way
initiative,
right?
And the interesting thing is, if you're a pure science student, if you're an engineer, or you're a female entrepreneur, then the amount of money you can get as a maximum per founder. Let's say you're 4 people, you have an engineering degree or undergrad degree, you get 10 lakh per founder.
Okay.
And if you're not, let's say that somebody who is not from a fancy school or probably is in his 12th or he just dropped out because of multiple reasons, and he got an idea and let's say that is in creating a SaaS product for farming and or probably doing a little bit of data science around the satellite data and predicting what kind of output you're going to get from the paddy farm. A government-supported initiative like this will have a larger impact. Not right now, it's just probably Kerala government has been doing it for about 40 years. So that you can actually see some... and
output has happened.
Yeah, it won't be the unicorn in today's sense, but there's a solution emerged. They tried it out. It worked. then it will grow into a company.
Right.
If it's not, it's okay. Right, like the founder, end of the day, once you become a founder, you always try to find solutions to problems, right? I really wish, if it's more states, right, try to copy some of it.
No, it sounds really good, except for the every district part of it.
Yeah, so that's...
I mean,
politicians love it, right?
Yeah, I get that. But remember when we had Kuldeep on, he was talking about the clusters and stuff like that?
Right.
So I feel like clusters for entrepreneurship are important, right? Because then you get everything like this. But other than that, it sounds like an amazing program.
Yeah, I think capital solves more problems than anything else when it comes to startup, right? Our friend Pranay is saying that money can solve all the problems. Mm-hmm. And stop solving problem, that is when you have a real problem.
I've heard that over revenue solves all issues.
Right.
No, so that's what. So it's encouraging that one state's doing this, but I guess
I'm sure
the others have to sort of take...
I don't know about other states. Probably some of the states are doing better. It's just my state, so I just keep...
No, even city level, I know like Hyderabad has a bunch of stuff. And
Hyderabad is really doing something
Telangana is doing a bunch of stuff like this as well. So there are initiatives, but there... Again, I could be just anecdotally saying this, but I think most people tend to still not... There's a reverse trust issue as well.
Yeah.
Like people don't trust the government themselves.
You don't want to, because... So, I mean, what's your interaction with the government is almost never positive, right? If you are not somebody who is working with the government on a regular basis, your interactions with them are always...
why go down that rabbit hole?
Yeah, why do I want to deal with that? You're worried about bribery. And you know what, though? I'll say this, man. I've been doing some stuff with Maharashtra government. People are awesome.
Sure.
They know what they're talking about. They study the issues deeply. Nobody's asked me for a penny in anything. So I mean, a lot of it is overblown. Like this
government has bureaucracy got a PR problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
So
it absolutely does.
I think some of the brightest people who go work for the government. Mm-hmm. Right? There are. I'm sure there are idiots as well, but
there are definitely idiots.
Yeah,
we know that.
Oh yeah,
but the guys who are leading initiatives, right? Whether it's a collector level or a secretary level, they're bright people. They have ideas. It's just that some regimes kind of don't let them fly. But most of the time they really want to do work, and maybe the problem is that hard things. It's difficult to do hard things, and it takes more time for a young person. It's easy to... So end of the day, why entrepreneurs create things? Because they like creating things, right? Mm-hmm. So to create something, a lot of people my obvious trolling of middle class is that they don't have anything to do. That's one of the reasons they build homes. Right? And I'm sorry. But entrepreneurs want to build something.
Right.
So let's say it's very difficult for me to kind of build a ground station to track low Earth satellites, but it's extremely easy for me to kind of create a wireframe for a primary 3 APIs pull from open places and just cook up a project over a weekend.
Correct.
So even we are old people here, right? So we understand what is the value of creation. For a young person, let's say a 19-year-old, he just wants to create, man. So he will just jump into the
what's the most easiest?
Food tech.
It's possible. Easiest, or what gives me it's
instant gratification.
Sure. As a human being, right?
Yeah, I think that's also at the core of how... So again, I know we say this about the young generation that attention spans are going down. And they are. I mean, for everything else you do in life since waking up, your attention span is pretty low. Yeah. So even when you're trying to be a founder and you're trying to create something, you tend to want faster results, I guess. Sure. Because everything is about hey, am I growing? Is this making me look better in front of the rest of my peer group, or whatever you're...
Are you a unicorn yet? Am I a unicorn yet?
Yeah. So stuff like this in all of these domains is not something which sees instant results, and I think that's not going to change. That's still going to be the case.
But actually, it's a good thing, right? The last thing core tech wants is basically fake people starting up.
Yeah. Right.
So the guys who are really have the drive to kind of build something like that. It's good, maybe, right?
No,
and the perseverance is also one of the like necessary qualification.
Sure.
Like you guys both, I think, said, right? These are difficult things, and it's hard to do difficult things, right? So you want people who are going to be able to
are willing to put in that
exactly. So
amount of time.
I mean, it's not just doing the simplest thing; it's doing the toughest thing.
Right. No, it's good to see that. Again, just to take an example from the West, while probably the West, their PR is better, right? Like you were saying, that right. Elon Musk has great PR. Mm-hmm. Like he pretty much does it himself. But
he's a great guy as well.
Yeah, and he knows science stuff.
Correct.
Just to put it very generally. But even otherwise, there's a lot of core tech entrepreneurs who, whether it's physics based, whether it's space, whether it's healthcare, whether it's whatever, who have come up and built stuff, and they may not have become as big as Elon Musk or so ever, but they've gotten the right kind of PR at even the early stage. So it is a little popular to be not part of the mainstream, not be the Valley guys, and not be the typical Silicon Valley kind of a startup.
Right.
And
or
that's
Parel.
Sorry?
Or Parel.
Yeah. So
Parel.
So
that's Pawai, man.
That's going to happen here.
No, Parel.
Parel.
Okay, I thought it was Pawai.
So that's going to happen here. Like there'll be Bhiwandi Valley or something, sure. Where the people.
Bhiwandi is the backbone of Indian unicorn.
Correct.
Every unicorn
has a Bhiwandi office. Like anyone who ships anything anywhere has a Bhiwandi office.
Without Octroi.
Now it doesn't matter.
Now it doesn't matter. Bhiwandi price is going to crash. Sorry.
But that's going to come here. So while we are saying it's tough and we want only the hard guys to go, and or rather we want you to be tough enough to sort of persevere in this. That's still true, but I think it could do with a little bit of better PR, and I hope that happens for this ecosystem. Even though Make in India was sort of supposed to be that.
Sure. But Make in India was more focusing not on early stage entrepreneurs.
Correct.
Right?
But it could have. I mean, I think it's a miss between Make in India and all that the early startup fund
and
whatnot.
Startup India as well, right? But
I like their agency. Ad agency. It's good.
Yeah, good agency.
Between all of that, there could have been some sort of symbiotic relationship between these agencies.
I never understood the Startup India program, right? I mean, that program required you to be funded by somebody else. So at that point in time, what is the value of the program once you have already been funded?
So that wasn't the right kind of. I think that those vehicles sort of. I don't know what happened to them, but...
Yeah. No, they're still around. You can still register for it. There are some tax benefits, which I'd like to get, but I am not funded by the sort of company...
Or you need to get a certification from one of the approved...
universities or
universities.
Exactly, yeah. So, it's essentially funding only. No,
we should create a SaaS platform. What a platform for that. Just get
fake
seals and all that.
See, there we go.
Take the thappa so that you can get the...
No, so I think those, again, the people behind planning all of this... Maybe some guys were idiots, some guys were really smart, but execution-wise...
intention was there, execution was not, which is the story of our government for everything.
Any government for that matter.
Yeah. Correct. So let's hope they course correct soon enough if they have to, and eventually the whole Make in India thing also sort of bridges in somewhere, and we actually get maybe, I don't know, special economic benefits for manufacturing and whatnot, which supposedly are happening. We just don't see
happen.
it.
I mean, they happen when you do the SEZ thing and stuff like that. There are a number of different things that you can
but again,
do.
It's hard, right? Red tape,
it's all
bureaucracy.
Hard. Everything is hard, man. I mean, this
even
stuff
finding
is not
information
easy.
about this stuff is hard. So
finding information about it's hard. Land acquisition is hard when you need to do core manufacturing and stuff like that. Just everything is tough, right? I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine who is in manufacturing space, and they're looking to put together a new facility, and it's just like every week he is going to Punjab to try and figure out land, and it's just taking forever to get anything done.
The startup capital of India is Singapore, and the hardware manufacturing capital of India is Shenzhen.
Yeah,
still
pretty much.
Yeah. So I think these are broader topics. I mean, I won't get into them, but the point is a lot of things. While the governments and the states are doing some, just to recap, I think they're doing some great work. Some of them. Really encouraging when you have the right people at the right panels and entrepreneurs have access to them. I think some great stuff has happened, like especially with space tech. I think that's a niche which is really emerging and going places, literally.
Yeah.
So that's happy to see. But the other everything else, I think, is gonna take a while, but there's still hope. So
yeah, absolutely.
let's hope things get fixed, and there are more folks like all us old folks encouraging new startup founders to have a little bit more attention and a little bit more perseverance, and hopefully we'll see someone who's thinking bike sharing food tech today will not, and probably build something interesting.
Oh, +1.
Great. Thanks for having this conversation, guys. And I think thanks for being here, Kris. It was great.
Thank you.
Where can we find you on Twitter and such like that?
Yeah, where can people reach out to Kris Nair?
Twitter. Kris Nair, KrisNair.
All right, cool.
Great,
And
that's where you go and listen to all
reminder
the...
to join our Slack channel. Go to the website ivmpodcast.com/Shunya One where the request is there. And also a reminder to please do some reviews on iTunes, TuneIn, etc. At any of the podcast places, just review us. And that's it.
That's it. All right. Thanks so much, guys. And see you next week for another episode. Bye-bye.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is your captain speaking. Sorry to say, but there's been a slight delay due to the apocalypse having suddenly begun. As you can see, there's death, destruction, and chaos taking place all around us. But don't you worry, food and drinks will be served shortly, and I would recommend checking out
IVM Podcasts
to get some of your favorite Indian podcasts. We'll keep you going till this whole thing blows over. Thank you.